Hi. Sustainability and making a living. Have you guys ever been completely fed up with the way our culture acts and lives, and the conformity that we have all grown into over the years? Make a living, make a living, make a living, credit, credit, credit. How do we finance our living? I lived that kind of life for better than the first half of my adulthood, where you get the job, you work your living, you pay your rent, and it's never enough, and you have to finance more and more and more. Well, I've always been a fan of the olden days. That's actually my grandma. That's my grandma Erickson, with a team of horses in Tomahawk, Wisconsin. And my adventure begins with a fascination with the olden days. I lived with my other set of grandparents on and off throughout my childhood, and all of my grandparents experienced the Great Depression and the wars, and a lot of the economic downturns that people went through in those days, how they learned to scrimp and save and economize. And I've always been inspired with how things were done in the olden days as they're using their modern appliances. Well, this is how we used to do things in the olden days. To me, the olden days left us a little closer to the natural world. So I've always been inspired by that natural world. And the more I fall in love with the Northwoods that I live in, the more I want to leave as small a footprint as possible. And I apologize for all the pictures. I used to be a photographer, so everything is visual to me. When my husband and I got together, we both had this shared dream of living closer to the land and the olden days, the romance of the olden days. How did you do things? So we started out as historic reenactors. So we got kind of a first-hand taste of what it is like to live in the olden days as historic reenactors, where we totally immersed ourselves in the culture of the late 18th and 19th centuries. So we learned an awful lot about how they did things in the olden days. Now, how do you pair this with the modern world? We will get to that, because there's this inspiration to stay close to nature. And these are all parts of our natural world within a couple 100-mile radius of Rhinelander, Wisconsin. I want to protect that. I want to preserve that. I want to live richly among this. So we're trying to leave as little a footprint as possible. In our perspective, we don't mow lawns. We don't use fertilizers. We don't use any kind of chemical processes in our little homestead. That's our lawnmower. And we only use that when the grass gets to about this high. And it aids in our composting process. So everything has a purpose. Shifting economies often necessitate change. And shared dreams make necessary change. Finding a place to live and be and do that's affordable. And learning how to make a living. And as one of our other speakers was talking about invisible disabilities, that's something we deal with in our household as well. So learning to navigate that and live in as impact-free way as possible. In 2007, we began our adventure. 2008 kind of forced our hand in really diving into being sustainable. And we started doing our research. We went to the 2007 Energy Fair in Custer, Wisconsin. And our imaginations were astounded by the technologies or lack of technologies that can help you live a greener way. and help you to reduce your impact during a time of climate crisis, how to live closer to the earth, and how to cut out the debt cycle. So we learned a lot of valuable things for our sustainability toolbox. And we find it kind of an interesting scientific experiment. That's what I often call our sustainability lifestyle, is we are living an experiment. A lot of trial and error, a lot of failures, and some wins. We learned things like how do people cook over an open fire, how to keep chickens, some of those basic items. And this doesn't look like much, but this is my beloved wee hovel house. I used to have a storefront in Woodruff, and the 2008 economic crisis that our nation went through affected the little businesses too. And I found that I could no longer afford my storefront. So we were actually kind of forced into looking at a different way to live. It's like, do we go back out into a larger mainstream to work jobs we hate? Or do we follow our dreams and do something that moves our heart? We decided to move the heart instead, because that's where our true motivation was. So our wee hovel house, it's got good bones, needs a lot of TLC, but it has the things that you need to be comfortable. It's a roof, it's got good bones, it's on an acre of land, so I can potentially grow all my own food. It also allows us places to do our work as artists. So it may not look like much, but it's a world of cozy and creativity. And creativity, and creativity. And we can create until we fall down. So we do our work as artists. I'm a multimedia artist. I make brooms. I do illustrations and portraits and make brooms. My husband is a blacksmith and a broom maker and a rustic furniture maker. If we find something interesting, we do the research on it to find a way to do it, to learn it, to immerse ourselves the entire experience. And as artists, we are still living the experiment. More work. Heating. Our wee hovel house has never had a furnace. Our little hovel house has no ductwork. It never did. So we are learning to do things the way my grandparents did, with wood stoves, cutting our own wood, and we found an economical way to do that. We are essentially cutting out the middleman of the fossil fuel industry and working a job to pay for the fuel, to heat the house. We do this directly. We go to the county forest. Our firewood costs us $20 a year. It's labor intensive, but it's a full immersion experience. You don't get that at a 9-to-5 job. In the county forest, we can take whatever's dead and down. And our wee hovel house only takes like 2 to 3 cords of wood to heat a winter. There was one winter, I'm going to introduce the term appropriate technologies. There was one winter we had a chainsaw that was out of commission and we needed firewood. And we collect firewood even into the winter, which is a really great way to collect firewood because you're immersed in the county forest, snow knee deep, on your snowshoes with a chainsaw or a crosscut saw to get your direct survival. So it's really a kind of a direct process of making sure you can survive the winter. Almost like a personal challenge, like, can I do this? Can I really do this? We've been doing it for 14 years, and it's awesome. Gardening. We have an acre of land, and the gardening thing is an ongoing experiment. Working through disabilities, my gardening skills aren't what I would like them to be, but there's the potential. And we're not the kind of people that do the classic monoculture gardening. We employ a couple of different aspects of permaculture gardening. What you see up here, up there is a raised bed, but we also have what are called hugel mounds. There was a type of farming called hugelkultur, popularized by an Austrian or Bavarian, I don't remember which, agriculturist called, his name was Sepp Holzer, and he popularized and is rebuilding microclimates wherever he goes with something called hugelkultur, where you do what the forest does. Anyone who's been hiking in our local forests knows that there's these little humps and hummocks throughout the forest that have all kinds of rich things growing on them, mosses and fungus and ferns and you name it. Well, underneath those humps is rotting wood and detritus from the forest, leaves and roots and things that are ending their life cycle in these hummocks and piles. That's what hugelkultur is. You lay out logs and things that are going to rot down, cover it with dirt, and then plant in that, doing something called companion planting, where you plant the different kind of plants that will feed off of each other and protect each other from pests and drought and a lot of the environmental things that will impact a garden. These humps that are full of all of this rotting organic material retain moisture, so you don't have to water or irrigate, which is a really good thing because we don't have running water. So having a way to keep your system irrigated is really important. Water. Like I said, we don't have running water. It's an ongoing process. We find it rather problematic where we are because we're on kind of a bed of granite. So digging a well is extremely costly. But we can get our water from a village pump that's about a mile down the road. And we are surrounded by natural springs. So we collect water that way. And in our ongoing experiment, we are looking into ways to capture rainwater as well as supplement it with the local springs and pumps. And you'll learn an awful lot about conservation when you do that. So like the average family goes through 90 gallons of water a day. We go through 7. We conserve a lot, taps aren't left running, and we also have plans to reuse our gray water. And gray water is the stuff from showers, from washing your clothes, from doing your dishes, that are all nutrient rich, especially if you're using biodegradable soaps and stuff, which we do. And you can reuse this nutrient rich gray water in your gardens. So our little place is a place we can work. It's a place that moves our spirits, and it's also our sanctuary from a larger outside world that we don't always understand. We found that going to this rumpled little place, we cut our living costs by probably 2/3 of what the average American lives with. And we were able to reduce credit cards. We don't own credit cards. We haven't used credit cards in years. We no longer have loans. We no longer have any kind of credit bills other than a couple of utilities. We maintain electricity. For us, we consider that an appropriate technology. It allows us to go on the internet, another utility in our world, so that we can actually do our business as artists with as little impact as possible. So we've stepped away from a lot of consumerism in our lifestyle. We don't need the next new thing. We don't need the next biggest thing. We don't need the fancy things. And so stepping away from consumerism, we acknowledge something that is the 4 R's. Reduce, reuse, recycle, repurpose. I don't think we have a single piece of furniture in our little hovel house that's brand new. Marketplace, rummage sales, thrift shops, even our clothing is representative as a step away from buying something new. When we can't buy something we need, we make it. Another find, the sewing machine. house we tore down to help pay off our house. It was left abandoned in this house. So that's now my sewing machine. We trade, we barter. A lot of different ways to remove the need for money in our economy. More stuff, more ways of learning. Foraging. Foraging is another way to really reduce your costs in a life. Doing presentations like this, like broom presentations, all ways to generate just enough money to get by. And fortunately, we don't have to do a lot of that because we don't need much. 5 years into our sustainability experiment, I got a couple of health diagnoses, those invisible disabilities that kind of knocked me out of the game and made me realize that I had to do things a lot differently if I wanted to maintain this lifestyle. At my sickest, unfortunately, my husband had to do a lot of the home steady type stuff that we do. But through more research, diet, exercise, I can now participate again in this experiment. And actually, this is how we get snow, our firewood in the winter. Everything we do does start with a plan. We are research hounds. We are armchair scientists and anthropologists. That everything from the things that we do need to buy to the things that we're repurposing, we put research into it. As an example, I don't like a lot of the plastics that we end up using in our day-to-day lives. So, and the amount of chemistry that we can barely read going into the products that we use for body, mind, spirit. So we make a lot of our own stuff. I had extra slides, but as an example, we no longer buy cleaning products. We haven't bought cleaning products for our home in years because we make them. You can get by without the next Pine Sol and the next big cleaner with some lemon juice and vinegar and baking soda. So you've got things that will scrub and polish and clean without having an environmental impact. And any of that goes into our gray water isn't going to kill our plants. Soaps. We haven't bought bar soap from a grocery store in probably 10 years. We have friends that make soap, so we trade for it. Things like deodorant, plastic, aluminum, plastic, and more plastic. So we make our own things like deodorant. We make our own body lotions. We make our own body powders with extremely simple ingredients like cornstarch, baking soda, essential oils like lavender, coconut oil, shea butter. Very simple ingredients that are inexpensive, and then you make up your product, you put it in a glass jar, and you've ended one line of plastic consumption. Appropriate technologies. I have a story that's kind of funny about appropriate technology. Now, we are enamored with 18th and 19th century technology, wood stoves, and the cozy scenario of grandma cooking on her wood stove in the kitchen. So we like that, we enjoy that. It is a little more work than a conventional gas range or electric range, and you never have 350 for an hour. You never know what temperature you're going to get. So it's definitely an experimental realm where you get to feel. You end up with a feel for it's like, okay, that's hot enough. Nope, gotta let it go a little more. Nope, we've got crappy heat today. It's variable. But appropriate technologies. I had an old dog that one day got into our chicken yard and killed my best laying hen. Now, we're very frugal and are big believers in nothing going to waste, so it's like, okay, I've got a dead chicken. What do I do with this? I don't want to just throw it on the compost pile. It's like, yeah, that would be really wasteful. So, in the summer, we always set up a tent or kind of a canvas lean-to with a wood stove in it and a kitchen table, and we set up what we call summer kitchen. So I realized, okay, I'm gonna have to butcher this chicken if I don't want it to go to waste. I don't know how to butcher a chicken. That technology died with my grandparents. But I have YouTube. So in the house, I've got YouTube. So I'm learning how to butcher a chicken. As outside in the yard, I've got a wood stove from the 19th century with a pot of boiling water on it. So it's like back and forth. This technology helps me do the old thing. So there's this wonderful blend of being able to live the way we want and incorporate older technology. That's our summer kitchen. That's where I butchered and cleaned a chicken. Snowshoes are an integral part of what we do. We do a lot of drawings and more drawings. I have notebooks full of drawings of the things we're going to do next to the house or the garden. And then the research starts and it's like, no, that's not gonna work. Oh yes, this'll work. Oh no, that's not gonna work. So it's all part of the living experience. And there's been a lot of influential writers and YouTubers out there that teach us. Another aspect of appropriate technology is the wonder of the internet. You can learn anything. And I was not brought up in an agricultural life, so I'm learning it through some of the brilliant minds on YouTube. There's one particular guy that we follow from time to time. He's got a site called Permies.com. I highly recommend looking into it. And he's got everything on there from composting toilets to hugelkultur to rainwater catchment. I think the guy's name is Yanto Phillips. He's written volumes and volumes and volumes on gray water treatment and repurposing this and repurposing that and how to do a sustainable home. Sepp Holzer, all about hugelkultur. And one of the things that we've had to really, really do a lot of research on is the feasibility of our location to do what we want to do. We were fortunate enough to find our little place in the Lake Superior Snowbelt, where housing costs are really, really cheap for the most part, especially if you're not looking for fancy schmancy, which I'm not a fancy schmancy. So the feasibility of our locations, like what kind of things are we going to need to live in the Lake Superior Snowbelt? Do we need modern things here, like snowblowers? We found no, snowblowers are a pain in the butt. You're always fixing it, and there's more snow than it can ever handle. Can we still do these things physically as we get older? That's a big worry because I'm almost 60. And 60, living with disabilities, like how do I stretch this out for a lifetime? Diet and exercise. And what do we do that's going to impact this environment? An awful lot of thought goes into what we do make, what we do buy. You know, is it something we can fix? Like vehicles, we don't get car loans. We find a way to either save the money aside for something that just runs that we can maintain ourselves instead of going the financial route. It's like I lived for like so many years under the stress of, oh, this car payment's due, this insurance is due, my house payment's due. I don't have enough money to take care of all of this stuff. In the way we've chosen to live, we live on less than $15,000 a year, comfortably. We don't starve. We are leaving a small, small footprint, as small as we can, by repurposing, by reusing, by doing the things that we've learned will do the least impact. We're not always perfect. And like I was saying before, appropriate technologies. We've got a crosscut saw for when a chainsaw goes down. We've got our wash tubs and wringer has a different means of doing laundry. In the winter, I cheat. I go to the laundromat because I'm not going to do laundry outside in the middle of winter. But in the months that I can, that's what I do. And again, the water can be used in my gardens. We make brooms, we make things. And here we go. Here's some of the experiments that we've done where we make our own body products with simple ingredients: cornstarch, baking soda, coconut oil, essential oils, favorite perfumes even can go into these things. And we watch our gardens grow with great delight. We don't always get it right, and the wild things take up a better part of our garden than actually gardening. We have found that raspberries are quite invasive, so we're letting them be invasive. And we have raspberries and raspberries and more raspberries. We're rewilding what used to be lawn. So we've got a lovely young forest cropping up now of birch and spruce and aspens. And we're harnessing the elements as much as possible. We've got plans to put up a greenhouse that will help to actually heat our house through passive solar, as well as extend a growing season so that we can grow vegetables throughout the winter. It is possible to live outside of the mainstream. It is possible to live below poverty level comfortably. It is possible to live without all the stuff that has been ingrained in our society of needing the next big new thing. We don't need the next big new thing. We just want to be comfortable. And we sacrifice a lot of convenience for living more directly, living in the moment, and being completely immersed in this experiment, day to day, every day. And we're doing our part to be the change we wanted to see in the world by doing less and living more. So thank you.